Secretary General of the Federation of Christian Churches of Kenya. Thank you very much for coming and honoring our invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Tom.
Yes.
Good to have you.
Yes.
Good to have me
in the show. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, I'll go straight into it. Legacy churches have taken a collective position.
Okay.
And they're saying, in fact, the ACK Archbishop, Jackson Olesapet, he said, nope, not on my pulpit, if you're a politician. And you know, he stood his ground in the presence of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Honorable Mudavadi, and other distinguished leaders. And my first question to you is, as a federation, what is your position? Are you likely to follow suit?
I think, to me personally, I concur with what he said, though it's a tough journey. But we need to have a beginning. So it might be tough, but I think we are headed for the right direction.
Okay.
The church has been misused for a long time, and I think we need to put back sanity in the altar. That one doesn't mean that we kick away our brothers and sisters who are politicians, but we need to guide them on how to go about this, and particularly the church matters. So to me, I think the Archbishop nailed it right, and we should take it that way, as much as it will be a tough process. But at the end of the day, we must practice some discipline.
So what would be your official position?
This is what I would put forward to all, to other clergies, that we need to come back to our senses and advise the politician, show them their position when they come to church. As much as they look superior to us sometimes when they come into church, we need to understand that we are all leaders in our own capacity. So when politicians come to the church, they should come and respect the rules and regulations that are set in the church, and also be ready to be nourished, other than just coming with some interest only to speak to the congregation. So they need also spiritual nourishment.
They themselves.
They themselves.
But you agree that both politicians and the church have one common denominator, and that is the audience and the congregation.
Yes.
So what are the risks? I mean, if you're going to tell the politicians to stay away from, speaking to their supporters who happen to be part of your congregation, then when you do a risk assessment, what are you likely to use? Because they come with heavy funding.
I think it is high time that we prove ourselves able leaders as church people. Because if we are only going to be enticed of the heavy funding that the politicians bring about in the church, we are losing direction. It is high time that we allow the politician understand it is one thing to come into the church to be nourished spiritually, and it is yet another thing to sell their interest to the congregation. So it should be born in their mind that when they come to church, they come like any other ordinary worshiper in the church, and they should respect the pulpit. And having said that, we must also get to understand that there are those of us who've got politicians who are friends. We should differentiate between friendship and the services that we give to God. So to me, we need to put things right. We need to have some order in the church. As much as we love our brothers and sisters who are politicians, we need to have order in the house of God.
Some semblance of order.
Yes.
So that means denying them the microphone.
Well, not force-free, but taking them to a process of understanding why we are doing it. Because to me, we have parliament where we elect these leaders to go. They don't just allow anybody else just to come in and do what they want to do. They have their own set rules and regulations. The same thing, they should respect the institution of the church, because we have our own set rules and regulations. And that's what I've just started by saying. I concur with what Archbishop said, but it is not an easy going. Okay. It will be a tough process. Okay. But we have to discipline ourselves and to keep ourselves focused on what we've been called to do.
On what you've been called to do. And the reason why I ask that is because recently we saw the Deputy President.
Yes.
He offered a very generous donation to Bishop Margaret Wanjiru's church.
Yes.
So if such a high-profile politician is stopped from speaking to their supporters who are part of your congregation,
yes,
then my question would be, how then do you intend to fund your operations?
Now, it is one thing to fund a project genuinely, and it is yet another thing to fund a project with some hidden agenda, some hidden interest, or with some string attached. So we have the project with us all the time. So I would advise the politician, don't ambush us when it comes to the season of election. So if you're genuine, start with us in January. And let's continue that way. But don't just ambush us when it comes to election year time. Another thing that I would like to mention, when we allow different politicians to use the pulpit, we must be very careful that we don't get divided and our members get divided. We must remember that these are members who are affiliated to different parties.
To different political
to different
persuasions.
Political, persuasion or parties. So the moment we allow one politician to come and take the mic, we don't know the mess that he might leave behind. So we are not opposed to them speaking to the congregation, but do it at the right place, at the right time.
At the right time. And in fact, even there is an argument that if you're going to allow politicians from party A, then there is obviously need to balance it off by also allowing politicians from party B. But I'm just wondering, and with all honesty, knowing how our setup is, our political configuration is, don't you run the risk of losing the much needed fund? And I want you to shoot straight and very honest.
I think we need to understand that our help comes from God. Having said that, we cannot limit God from whatever channels that he may use to support us. But we must also be very wise to read in between of the lines. Because as wise people, when you come visiting me, I'll know the reason as to why you are visiting me. Is it a genuine visit? Or is it that you want to maybe to entice me into something? Or maybe you have a hidden agenda that I don't understand. I don't think that these politicians just come. There must come some negotiation somewhere. And I'm not fighting the politician from supporting the churches. But I'm saying let us do it genuinely. Because if you don't do it that way, some days the repercussion will face all of us.
How do you measure genuinely?
When you work with somebody, you'll always be able to tell whether they are genuine threats or maybe they're taking advantage. So in such a season of politics and people trying to vie for political seats, it is in the public domain that they have an interest. Why don't, if you don't have an interest in what you are doing, why don't you come to church every other day as a good believer? Yes.
Because we are seeing a number of politicians converging in churches as we head towards the general election. And that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Most of the time, they don't come to church. They only come to church when they want our votes.
When they want your votes. Now, there are those who say politics is, in fact, the politicians themselves are the ones who say that politics is a dirty game.
Because they are not genuine.
So why don't we allow them to sanitize in church?
No, I think that is the wrong place to sanitize their politics. Now, one thing that should be made clear to all of us is that politics is not a dirty game. But if you want to maintain it all alone, you must look for ways and means to make, to keep off other people. Remember this. As church members, as believers, we are part and parcel of what is happening in this nation. Economically, we are part of it. Politically, we are part of it. So we cannot shy from politics, but let us be genuine in our politics.
So what is the role of the church?
The role of the church is to have a voice that will give direction, that will give guidance to the people of that particular nation.
Okay.
Yes.
In fact, you remind me, I mean, let's go back to the 80s and the 90s. We remember names like Bishop Mathenge. We remember names like David Gitari, Reverend Timothy Mboya, Alexander Muge. When they spoke,
Yes.
the country listened. And they took a stand in
Yes.
almost all social issues that affected the nation. So in other words, they set an agenda. So I'm wondering, if we do a comparative analysis today,
Yes.
what will it take for the church to regain its footing?
I think that's a very good question. But one thing we need to understand, that leaders are grown. They don't just emerge and take leadership. So it is not all lost. God is still raising his own leaders. And at the appropriate time of God, not at the appropriate time of man, God will raise a voice for this nation, politically and also in the church.
Are we likely to see a return of that brand of leadership, especially coming from the church?
Oh.
Right now we have issues in like Kipia. And you remember
Yes.
Ndingi's position when we had clashes in Molo.
Yes.
He stood very firm and faced the late President Daniel Mboya.
My brother Tom, I want to remind you that God is a God of second chance. And he will always raise a voice at his own time. I'm so hopeful and I'm so expectant to see some in the near future, a voice being raised in this nation. Just the same way we enjoyed the voices of the likes of Dingi Mathenge. God is a God of second chance, and some days in this nation we are going to see and hear of a voice that will give direction to this nation.
But God also expects that within leadership, people would represent his interests very well. And you've given a good example of Ndingi Mathenge, who spoke. He didn't look the other way when there were social ills within society. So when are we likely to see, you know, this voice coming through?
This is what happens with God. There are times that we see messes all over, but God will always allow revival once again.
Okay, all right.
So we are looking forward to having a very strong revival that is coming and that will overturn tables. This revival, when this revival starts, the revival will move not only in some small quarters, but it will move towards all direction.
Towards all direction.
Yes, and when it is God's revival, not man's revival, such voices will be heard. So people should not give up. And people should not, get tired of waiting. God in his own timing, he will bring back revival in this nation. He will bring back revival in the church. He will bring back revival in the nation.
So as your closing remarks, and just to tie it into that last point that you have made. We all remember, you know, in the Bible, Jesus coming to church and finding people involved in trade and commerce, and he actually took a whip and caned them. So if Jesus were to come today, would he whip the leadership in some of these charismatic churches that we see today all over?
He whipped once, but in our time and generation, maybe he would whip people twice. Because many things have gone wrong. But having said that, it is not all lost. God has a way, and he has his own means of bringing back people to himself.
Thank you, Bishop Joseph Mathenge.
You're most welcome, Tom.
Thank you. That was Bishop Joseph Mathenge, Secretary General of the Federation of Churches in Kenya. Asante sana for making time. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we have the day's business, and also we'll get sporty, so don't go far. Stay with us.